What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you come into the channel. Check out the content. And with that being said, man, I want to speak on the guy Druski, right? And let me see if I can find a picture of Druski. Druski was he did Whiteface at a NASCAR racing event, and that sparked a lot of outrage, from a lot of different people. And so my thing about it, some people say it was outrage, and some people say it was a double standard that Druski was allowed to perform in whiteface at this event. And some people say it was a an overreaction by people who said that that's a double standard. But my thing is how you really can't tell people what to be offended by. And so when you get into the habit of telling people what to be offended by and what's offensive and what's not offensive, then you set yourself up for when the shoe is on the other foot. Then it's not so fun. It's not a laughing matter. And so my take on the situation with Drewski is, for the people who feel like they were offended by that, I think they have every right to feel that way. And you can't take their opinions and try to downplay them or discount them, saying that he's a comedian and stuff like that. You got to respect people's opinions. So anybody who said that I'm offended, Drewski shouldn't be, he shouldn't be running around doing whiteface and perpetuating negative stereotypes about another race, because everybody knows that if that had been a white guy, right, doing blackface and perpetuate negative stereotypes about African American people, you know how that would have went, right? That would have raised a lot of eyebrows. And so people say that, well, he didn't mean no harm. And really, like, what he meant is not really important, because like I said, what really matters is the fact that people who he just offended certain people. So why should he be able to run around in whiteface when other people can't run around and imitate other races? Like I said, if there had been somebody imitating a African American, it wouldn't have went over well, or any other race or ethnicity. You just can't go around doing that. And so if somebody say that if they're offended, you gotta really just take them at their word. Same thing like when you had those professional teams, like you had the Washington Redskins and Cleveland Indians and stuff like that. Like, I'm not Native American, so it didn't offend me, but I always felt like when people said that, like Redskins is negative, right? You gotta listen to that, because I don't know the history of, like, where that name come from. I don't know the history of like how that affects the people, or how that make the people in that community feel when you say Redskins, or when you say you name a team like the Cleveland Indians, or or another team. I don't know. Like any of those teams that that had those Native American logos and names and stuff like that. You gotta. And so I can see why you change it to the Commanders. Like, the Commanders is not really offensive to anybody. And I don't really follow baseball, so once they changed the team from the end, I don't know what the Cleveland name, the team now is for the Cleveland, for their baseball team. But it just takes some getting used to, as far as like the Commanders. Now I'm used to saying the Commanders, right? And it's not that big a deal. I think it's cool, to respect people, their heritage, respect their ethnicity and their race and stuff like that, because if you want somebody to respect yours, then you need to respect theirs. And so, that's I don't know, like I said, that if Drewski meant to be disrespectful, but what sometimes your intent is not really important. That's just like, if you playing with a weapon and somebody gets seriously hurt, you still gotta pay the price for you. Some you can't say, oops. It's still a price to pay for the mistake that you made, whether you meant to or not. A lot of times that won't even be taken into account. It'll have some bearing, but there's still a price to pay for making mistakes, and so that's the way I feel about the Druski situation. I know, and the only reason why I brought it back up is because like some people are just not letting it, like I'm still seeing comments and it's still coming up on my line. And I was like, wow, I wonder why, they're still coming up on the timeline. Like this happened like sometime last week. So, some people, like I said, some people just feel a certain way about it. Whereas though either they really trying to get the point across or they feel like that their point is not being, their opinion and their stance on the situation is not being respected. And so, yeah, you definitely want to respect people's opinions and their stance on these situations. And so, with that being said, man, that's all I have to say on the situation. It's just about, like I said, respecting each other's opinions, and just leave it at that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Make sure to leave a comment, and I'll check you all out in the next video. Peace.